everybody, this is Geronimo from Jolt to Grow, and I'm here joined with Coach AJ. How's everything going?
It's going pretty well. How have you been?
Everything well. Thanks for being here today.
It's a pleasure.
Today, guys, we're going to talk about a very common question slash discussion debate, either water or air pumping. What are the pros? What are the cons? What benefits each method has? So, or where to start with? Because that's another question people usually have. So, Coach AJ, what do you think about this common concern? What would you suggest to practitioners, to beginners that are a little bit unsure about which method to use when it comes to pumping?
Thanks for that feedback. Uh, it could be really confusing because there's a lot of different options out there. Uh, you have everything from very basic types of pumps to these computerized pumps. And then,
That's
of
true.
course, you have some devices that use water and some that don't. I think it's best to go into, the pros and cons with that. And that way, someone like an educated consumer could think about, well, this will work better for me, or or maybe I can try something else if it
That's a
doesn't.
good idea.
Uh, yeah, so I mean, I would say, for example, with water, uh, water using water with a device, I think may be a little safer.
Oh, okay.
Uh, a lot of guys who have used water versus air have reported that they don't get quite the same level of negative side effects with the water. It seems to prevent edema a bit more.
That's
You're usually
interesting.
getting a little less discoloration. Plus, the seal seems to be more secure because if you're using air, I mean, you're gonna, it might be difficult to tell, well, it's leaking or notice the leaking. Whereas with water, if you're using a water pump and there's a leak, you're definitely gonna know it.
You can see the bubbles, right? That's true.
Yeah. Or if it's really bad, you see water squirting out of somewhere on the pump. Uh, but there's also the advantage of heat. Let's say you wanted to
Mm,
use very warm water. You don't want to use hot because you don't want to burn the penis, but you use very warm water, especially if you can keep it warm using something like a heat lamp or pad. That can improve the quality of your workout. So
we're
those are
talking
definitely
about
things.
air pumps in that case, right? Like,
With water. I mean, you could
oh,
you could
okay.
probably still use a heating element with the air pump, but you could imagine that water is going to hold and transmit that heat better. It's just going to
Oh, for
feel,
sure.
yeah, it's
Definitely.
going to feel more pleasurable.
Mm,
So I think you have that in favor of water, and I think for a lot of guys starting out, there's a lot of your basic pumps out there that use water. Bathmate's a good one, and a lot of guys like it.
mm,
And one of the things that's very important that a lot of guys miss out on, especially if you want to engage in long-term training, is that your training should be pleasant. You should like it.
mm,
If it feels good, if you have little to no negative effects, if
mm,
it's easy to use and you can manage it, you're going to stick with it longer than something that's probably more complex,
mm.
or that's something that it's a little harder to figure out. It's not giving you that feedback you want.
Oh, for
So
sure.
those are things to take into consideration.
Yeah, what
Uh,
water pumping has that certain element that's quite enjoyable. You can be on your shower taking a bath with the pump, sort of build this whole ritual, your me time, if you will.
yeah,
So yeah, definitely, if you get to enjoy it, the better, and the easier to stick to your routine. Definitely, I feel like with air pumping or air pumps, you still get to build that sort of ritual or me time. I mean, there's that thing that you can, for example, lie on the couch and still you do your pumping, while maybe water pumping can be limiting because you need to be on the bathroom.
yes,
So That's the only thing for me.
Yeah. That would be in the definitely be in the cons column because water's messy, and you're not going to
Exactly.
have. Yeah, you got to be somewhere where if that pump leaks out or you have to void it, you'll be able to dump it. So most guys are doing that in the vicinity of their tub or their shower. Uh, and also with air pumping, a lot of the more advanced pumps, especially like the computerized pumps,
Mm,
usually rely on air. And there's
that's
some
true.
things that you might be able to do more easily with air than with water, say like a more advanced pump, like a pulse style regimen. Now, I
That's it.
mean, there's a
Mm.
there's a lot of advancements being made though, and even now you'd think that we've reached the limit of what you could do with creativity, but people are coming up with new stuff and they're adding vibration
Yeah.
and all these, and some of them come with infrared already in it. So there's a lot of different new options that weren't available anymore. It makes it more convenient. So, you definitely want to shop around. Your shop definitely has a lot of great options. So
I
I do
do.
recommend people start there, but there's a lot of options that just didn't exist even 5 years ago.
Hmm. That's
So,
true.
find what works for you. But I would say if someone that's starting out, test out something basic just to get the feel for it and see if you like it. Get
Either
yourself a pump
water
that's
or air, you mean?
yeah, either water or air, but something that's going to give you a literal feel for what it's about.
Mm.
And unless you're one of those, and there are a lot of guys out there who are very savvy and they love technology. If you're comfortable with that, then you can go for one of those higher end models. But of course, stay within your budget because if it's something that you try and you don't like it, then you're out that money. So
That's
my
true.
advice is if you're not sure of what it is you want to do, get yourself a simple device and just test it out.
A simple device, and even better if it has a gauge so you can measure at which pressure you're pumping. That would be the right move, definitely.
That's definitely a pro.
Mm.
With that precision, you can gauge and you can make small increments as needed. And it also it also tells you the pump is working because sometimes when a pump's not working, you'll notice that on the pressure gauge, and it's like you'll probably notice what usually happens is it's like a slow leak,
Mm.
and that ordinarily is caused by a lack of a good seal.
Mm.
But let's say you're doing everything right with the seal, then it could be some kind of a technical fault or
Mm.
something within the valve or something like that.
That's another element for air pumps, a pro, I must say, because though there might be some options, I feel like usually pumps with valves or gauges to measure the pressure are more common or easy to find within the air pumps category.
I think
Uh,
so.
so yeah, that's a big pro in a sense. It's a pity actually for water pumps, most water pumps or popular water pumps to not have a gauge to measure. I feel that's the only thing that compels me more. That the only thing that makes me wonder if it would be better to get an air pump. uh, you really have to develop that kinesthetic sense you always say, when it comes to water pumping, in a sense, because there's no hint.
Yes.
Um, just your body. That's the only hint, in a sense.
Yeah.
So
And,
yeah.
and some guys will use the gauge because a lot of these water pumps will have like a gauge, a measurement gauge, not a pressure gauge, but it's an actual gauge on the pump showing the length.
Huh.
And that's not maybe not accurate for assessing pressure, but it does give you a benchmark.
Hmm.
And something that you could try to do in that case would be to, every workout, try to get a tiny, even if it's just a little fraction of an inch more, or if not every workout, at least every few workouts. That's a good idea.
Mm.
And something to keep in mind, because a lot of research has come forward showing that there might be benefits to that. It may be worth considering training in a sort of a cyclical fashion, like when it comes to using pressure over time, instead of
Eh,
like a linear approach. You're kind of using one of these, like almost like a two steps forward, one step back approach. You see that a lot with different formats of training. And if you don't have a way to gauge it, you can at least use that visual marker. And of
that's
course
true.
you also want to use other clues. For example, your erection quality. Like if you keep pushing and you're reaching a plateau, and then you notice, hey, my EQ feels kind of stagnant. I'm getting more sore. I'm getting more side effects, and that's a sign that you may need to either back off on the pressure and time,
Mm.
or maybe even just take a few days off and allow for that recovery.
Yeah, that's great advice actually. Um, another question I have, and this could be a good last question. I've heard that sometimes one thing, which this would be within the cons category or column, is that maybe with water pumping, you can have these situations where there's a difference in pressure due to the water within the pump. And maybe, for example, you're squirting the water out, and maybe you have air and water within the pump, which could be considered a mistake, right? How's that situation? What happens in that situation?
Yeah, that could be the thing. For example, let's say you're doing some kind of a pulse pumping.
Okay.
Once that water's got, and you're voiding that water out to get more pressure. But let's say now you lower the pressure and now you have air in there, that could be a problem.
Hmm.
I'm thinking if so, whoever's listening out there, if I'm giving them any kind of ideas, if they can create a pump with some kind of a reservoir where instead of, jetting that water out, the water might be saved somewhere. So if you need it again, you could bring it back. That could be a solution to that. But uh, you can imagine that's a I'm trying to visualize it in my head, and it's kind of cumbersome. So,
Yeah,
whoever's
no,
got
that's
a mind
true.
for that.
Yeah, but it does provide a point, I think, or at least a guideline when it comes to using a water pump, that usually it's always better to try expulsing the water, obviously, but the air at the same time. So there's just water inside the pump, and there's no this difference in pressure that can sometimes result in some sort of injuries, or the penis responding in a way that it shouldn't, due to this difference in because sometimes your for example your head might be out of the water and on the air, so you get this difference in pressure with in
Yes.
different points. So usually that's the right way to approach water pumping, with caution, trying to expose the air, obviously. And
Yeah. You make a really good point with that, and I think that's one of the reasons why that's one reason why a lot of these water pumps is they have a ceiling to how much pressure you could
exactly.
use. Because imagine if that weren't there and you just keep pumping water out, something happens and you're really not cognizant of how much pressure you're using. That you could see how that can, you go beyond that, say 15 HG of pressure, and
For
you don't
sure.
know it. You could hurt yourself.
Yeah, you
Because
can hurt
water,
yourself.
yeah, that lack of water is going to be less forgiving than the lack of air, where you could just vent and bring that air back.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, those things need to be considered, guys, when starting to pump either with water or air. There are so many things to take into consideration. So, just for you to know, on the description of this episode, you'll find links to blog articles where we explain each step to take when starting penis pumping. So you don't make the mistakes that could spoil all your journey. So thanks all for being here today and responding this common concern about pumping. You already know, though, you'll need to experiment. You'll need to see what works best for you, but always with care. So guys, thanks all. Thanks everyone
Thank you.
for being here today. If you have any questions, let us know.